Hey guys, welcome back to Besiege. The response to my last Besiege video was more than I really ever expected, so obviously we're coming back and we're playing some more. But today we're actually starting off with a basic tutorial, because the game's still really new, and there's a lot of people I've noticed who are either asking questions about basic game mechanics, or have seen other YouTube videos where things seem to be missing from people's knowledge. So we're just going to do a baseline run-through of all the features and the blocks and how all the things work right now. We are in version 0.03, and hopefully it won't become out of date too quickly, as we've been getting, the updates will be coming very quickly, as we're still in very, very early alpha. We're starting off by looking at the main screen. If you load the game, this is the first screen you get. If you right-click pretty much anywhere on the screen, you can start rotating the planet around. Rotating the planet does show off the different continents on the little planet. We also have a moon and a cube. The cube is our sandbox level. It does say it's a work in progress, but you can still go there and do things. The moon is still locked, and most of the continents are locked, except for the one continent of Epsilon, which is the only one currently available to play. Once you click on that continent, you'll then kind of zoom in view of the maps as a whole, and you can see we have, these are all the various levels in this campaign structure of this continent. It starts off in the bottom here, and just the zones progress as you go. So we'll just click on zone number 1. And once you click into the first zone, you'll have the little title of a thing here, and you get a little tutorial about how to build stuff, but I'll be helping you here, so it won't really be needing that. Now, whenever you build a machine, you will have a root cube. This is your root cube. It always is in your machine. It does not matter where it is in your machine, but it is always in your machine. It is the one point where you can then start attaching other points to. The game does use a parent-child-like relationship between parts, so one part is always the parent, and multiple parts may be the children, but it's a tree that all kind of meets back at the single top root node, which is the root cube. You can also see we have a dotted line that's surrounding our root cube right now. It is the bounding box for our creations. If you want to be completing the levels and progressing through the various stages, you have to keep your creation inside the dotted box. Now, you can turn the dotted box off and go into free build mode. The option is right here in the menu. It says, and you can even see right there, if you turn this off, you will not be able to officially complete levels. So you can, build whatever you want, whatever size you want, and have all kinds of fun. But if you want to do the levels, you kind of have to leave it on. But that's fine. You can always come back to these things later and do whatever you want. Now, going through the rest of the menus up top, we do have the go back to the main menu thing up in the top right. It's a little house. We have our settings, which include the current frame rate, mute, tooltip things, changing various camera settings. You can even go into pyro mode, which, if you enter the simulation, just kind of click on things and they catch on fire. But again, like turning off the bounding box, it prevents level progression. And you can even make your machine invisible for other various reasons. And of course, we have a screenshot folder. So if you press F12, you will take a screenshot. That's in the game, but it's also Steam does that as well. So either way, if you press F12, you will be getting screenshots. There is a reset camera button, so depending on, as you move the camera around, do various things, try to get different looks of your screen. Like, you may end up with a camera that's way off, someplace you don't want to be. And you can just press the reset camera button, and things come right back to normal. There is also a hotkey for the reset camera. It is F1. Mousing over the menu for most things in the game will show you what their shortcut is, and most things do have a shortcut. The next thing, right next to the reset camera, is a control list. So if you forget some of the basic controls, they're listed right here, such as flipping the wheel directions with the F key, or any block direction for flipping any direction. R for rotating any particular block 90 degrees at a time. X is your quick delete, or so is your delete car, and spacebar is your quick start, quick stop for the simulation itself. You can even toggle the HUD on and off with tab. We also get machine info as well. We don't have a machine right now, so it contains exactly one block count, and the center of mass is right in the middle of that one block. We can, once we build a machine, destroy it all at once if we really just want to start over. You're clicking on the trash can thing, you get a little check mark, a little X mark. You hit the check mark, and then poof, you'll go back to square one again. But we're already at square one, so it doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. So we just go bloop, 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 bloop. Oh no, that was a horrible mistake. Oh no. We do have a wrench here for the key mapper and parameter tuning. A lot of the parts have different parameters that can be tweaked, and you can even change which keys activate which blocks and things like that, which becomes very important when you get much more complicated machines. So we'll be using that a lot later. There is an eraser tool, so once you, instead of, if you don't want to delete the whole machine and you have a whole bunch of stuff on here, you can just open up the eraser tool and just click on a whole bunch of stuff, or you can actually just use the X key and just tap X when you have your mouse over a part that'll get rid of things as well. There is set the machine on the ground, so once we build our machine, we can just set it on the ground to make sure that we're not actually dropping too far and causing our machine damage before we even get started. There is a click and drag rotate thing, so once we build our machine, we kind of like face it a slightly different direction. We don't have to necessarily drive it to turn it. We can just click on this, hold the click down, and as we move our mouse left and right, you will see that our machine does rotate first. We only got the one block right now, but it still illustrates the point. And finally, in the moving our machine category, we have a translate button, which gives us the 3 degrees of axis. We have an X, a Y, and a Z. So if we need to move our craft around the bounding box, because say we don't necessarily want this to be in the middle, we want to have like a really long thing with that, we can actually move our craft around, including up and down the 3 various degrees. So we can get our thing centered wherever we want. We do have a redo and undo buttons. Of course, there is a shortcut for undo, just the Control Z, that is the default for Windows. We have a load from file, so if you've already saved a craft, you can load it up and use it whenever you want. There's, of course, a save file if there is a load file. We have the simulation start, so the simulation start is this red button here, which, of course, we have just blocks, so it just kind of drops like that. But the spacebar also does this thing, so you don't even have to have your mouse over there. And we have a timer, or a clock, so we can slow down time of the simulation. As you can see, we lower that down to 18%. And we start the simulation, we fall very slowly. The smoke the smoke falls up very slowly, and we get really nice slow-mo effects. And if we have really fast things happening on our machine, we can see them very, very clearly in the slow mode system. And there's also, you can speed up time too in case something needs to be sped up. We will put that back at 100%, and then we'll start going through the blocks. Now, all the blocks in the game are listed under these categories right now. We have the basic blocks, and some of the blocks kind of show up in multiple categories, but we'll just go through the basic blocks here. Not including our starting block, most of the blocks that will make the body of your machine will be these wooden blocks. We have a double wooden block and a single wooden block. Obviously, the single wooden block is 2 blocks long, the single is 1 block long. Now, it is important to know that if you build a thing that just kind of butts up against the next piece of wood, it doesn't necessarily interlock. If you really wanted to interlock, you could have the piece overlap. If they overlap, they fuse together and become a single solid rigid frame. And so just use the X key, like get rid of that stuff. So let's just make ourselves a bit of a frame. And since these are overlapping, they'll become a single solid piece. It doesn't really matter which direction you're overlapping from, but as long as there's some overlap, it'll become a single unit. And let's just kind of stick some pieces down there. So now we have a nice little platform we can build our machine from, and we can even tap it on the ground. You can see whatever the lowest part on the machine is, that is the part that touches the ground, not necessarily the root cube. The next thing on here are the motor wheels. Again, if you mouse over pretty much any thing, it'll show you what the default controls are, and in this case that you can flip the wheel around just by using the F key. Of course, all the controls can always be remapped. We can remap any control in the game. So we can just throw on some wheels on this craft here. You see, we do get red arrows indicating which direction the wheels will rotate. In this case, their default direction is in the counterclockwise direction. And that means if we press up the arrow key, we roll forward. If we press the down arrow key, that rolls backwards. So we have nice forward and backward movement already. Now, of course, if you mouse over that and you say you don't want it to be that way, you can hit the F key, and that flips that one around. So now, pressing the forward key causes these side wheels to go backwards, which just kind of spins us around in place. So even without changing the parts on our craft, we can change how it behaves just by either flipping the controls or by flipping the wheels around like that. Now, again, if you do want to change what buttons control the wheels or any other part, there is the key mapping tool. So you click that to get a nice little red box. Click on the thing you want to control. You'll get this menu here, and it says forward, up, or reverse, down. And you can set these to be anything you want. I recommend picking some section of the keyboard that you feel comfortable with. Unfortunately, we cannot use the WASD keys because they are bound to the camera as now. But I find a good supplement for WASD is the IJKL. So, in this particular case, we can set I to forward and K to reverse. You can even change how quickly the wheels spin from a minimum of 0 to a maximum of 2 times the normal rate. So, there's various things you can do to make that useful. So, now we have that. So, now we can hit the I key, and since that is the only wheel we change, that one rotates when the other ones do not. The other ones still operate via the arrow keys. Now, and having the same types of blocks operate on different keys is a good way to make more complicated mechanisms that need for fine controlling like that. So let's take these wheels back off now that we've kind of messed up with their things. We also have in the basics the steering hinge. Now it says steering hinge, but you can use this hinge for basically anything, and it shows us that here that the default controls are the left and right arrow keys. So we can put this anywhere on the craft we like, and so we open that up and we see pressing left or right arrow keys, move it left or right. You will notice there is a red arrow pointing in the left counterclockwise direction. That is the default left direction. So even if we do flip this around using the F key, that arrow now is going clockwise, but that is still the default left arrow key. So when we go to remap it with the parameter tuning, we have to remember that left is the direction of that arrow. So because left and right are not the only directions we can really do. Oops, did not mean to actually start the simulation. You can put these blocks on top, and of course you can rotate any block with the R key, not just F key. So we can have this on top, face like that, and then we can have another one face backward, and they're both operating on the same keys. So if we launch and we hit left, we get this thing going forward and backward. And since we have 2 of them that are exactly opposite each other, the top one happens to be exactly vertical as the other one moves below it. Or, of course, you can go the other way and have something that operates in the same direction, and that way you get kind of like a super bendy thing. And you can use this to make robotic arms, to make reloading mechanisms. There's multiple kinds of machines you can make. And of course, since we can remap the keys, instead of it being left or right, we can say go with O and P for this one. And if we click on this one, we can have set this one to Y and U. So now both of those are set to different key maps. We can control one of them or the other. And you can see, you can really start thinking of like how you can make really complicated robot arm things. So there's really a lot that you can unlock with that. And you can do this with virtually any moving block in the game, remapping the keys to do various things. The next piece we have in here is in the basic category is the brace. It's a strut. It is a metal bar that goes from one point to another. And you can go from any point to any other point. So you create them by starting off by clicking and holding down at the start location, dragging, and then letting go at your finish location. You'll see that you will get a little blue arrow pointing directly out from the area you are. So if you're not exactly sure where you're hovering over or where you're attaching to, look for the blue arrow, and that'll show you exactly which node you're attaching to. You can go clip through pieces of wood. It's not exactly recommended, but it's something you can do. You can also attach multiple struts to the same point. They don't really care. They'll just kind of clip through anything. And that is the basic category. Now, the blocks category looks a little similar. It does, of course, have the 2 types of wooden blocks because they are they're the basic type of block in the game. It also has the brace, but it also has the wooden panel, which does attach to one piece. Again, you R to rotate, and then kind of hangs off the bottom. So you can kind of use this to make a type of skirt. It is an armor type, so as you play through the game, there will be archers and things like that, which will attempt to damage your machine with their arrows. This is a type of armor you can use, and it only attaches to one half, so you can kind of like cover areas that aren't even necessarily made of wood. Oop, I did not mean to do that. I'm just using the X key to get rid of these things. Boop, boop, boop. And let's change the shape of this a little bit. I would just like to have that be 1 wide there. And then making sure to overlap again, so this is a whole solid thing. Now, the next block we have in line is the hinge. So if we, say, have a bit of a mast right there, and we put a hinge on top of that. Oh, we don't have any legs here. Let's put some legs down really quick. There. And we start a simulation. You see, the hinge is just kind of unpowered. It'll just kind of flop around and just kind of do whatever. And, of course, you can place the hinge forward, sideways, and all that kind of thing. And it just kind of hangs around and does its thing, and you don't have to worry about it. So, if we then put blocks on top of that, say, it does take weight into account, so it'll, since we have more blocks on this side, it falls to that side, and the blocks, of course, don't pass through each other like the hinge does, so it'll stop right there. And this actually could be something less like that. And we can make some nice struts from there to there, and there to there. You'll see where this is going shortly enough. Alright. So the next thing we do have is a swivel joint, which acts just like the hinge, only the fact that it attaches to the end and it swivels the other way around. So it attaches on one side and it swivels about that axis. So this will continue to stick straight out and it will turn that way. And the next thing we have it here, this is actually the newest pipes in version 0.03, is the half pipe, which allows you to have something that will be able to slide through there. So if you want to build slingshots or things like that, you can, or other moving sliding parts, you can use that to lower the friction. They don't get caught on the machine as much. And that does finish our basic blocks. Now if we go to the mechanical blocks, this is where things really start getting interesting. Of course we do have the wheels that were also in the basic blocks, but we also have unpowered wheels, which is again one of the newest blocks to 0.03. So if we put, say, powered wheels on the back, and you can see we have our arrows here. This one is going the proper direction. The unpowered ones do not have arrows because they're not powered, and it really doesn't matter. But the powered wheels in back will still move our craft just fine. Why unpowered wheels? They can be used for pretty much anything if you just want to support your craft without necessarily moving it more, but it's really up to you what you decide, what you want powered and unpowered. Of course, next is the steering hinge, which was also in the basic blocks, but there's a movable part, so it is also in the hinge part. So what I'm going to actually take those off and put these here. And now that we have those there, we can put our wheels on that. And I'm going to leave them as our left and right keys. So let's see, pressing left, but actually they're backwards. So right now you can see the arrow is going counterclockwise, or no, it's going clockwise on both of these. So if we hit the left arrow key, it's going to turn that way, which would actually be turning the machine right. So that's kind of backward right now, but we can flip that around using the F key. And now if we press left or right on our arrow keys, we got a steering kind of like a car, and we use the powered wheels. So this is now a rear-wheel drive, front steering kind of car mechanism. The next block is also called a steering block. It's a little redundant that this is called a steering hinge, but this is also called just steering. But the difference between the steering hinge and this block is that this pivots about perpendicular to the surface you place it on. But this rotates around the axis of something. So again, you have your red arrow telling you which direction the thing will rotate. And again, this also, by default, rotates with the left and right arrow keys. So you can see this is turning along the axis instead of perpendicular to it. And that is really useful for, we're going to be like helicopter blades and things like that. Like anything you really need to set an angles very specifically, it's very good for that. You can also, instead of having the wheels turn like a car, you can use these steering blocks where when you press left or right, they rotate forward and back. So you can have a tank steering by the wheels being powered and also the things the wheels attach to being powered. And different keys affect which one's being powered or not. So we could, let's just do that really quick actually. So instead of the driving like a car, We can put these on there. And we'll put... I think we need powered wings. Okay, so we have our forward keys will push us forward and back. So our forward and back arrow keys power us, but if we hit left or right, you can see the internal things start rotating, and that rotate our craft sideways, kind of like tank steering. Now, it's really slow, but of course, like almost everything else in the game, you can tweak it, including the speed, which is, you can get up to twice as fast. Which, well, of course, that one is faster. But that is a way, a alternate way to turn a craft other than what we were doing before with the car-like steering. But I do kind of prefer the car-like steering. It's very familiar. It takes up less space than having those steering blocks on every wheel. So we'll go back to that. Making sure that these are the way we want them to be for our type of steering. Now, the next block is the decoupler. This is just a block that breaks itself in half when you press the J key by default. So if you put that on front there, start up the simulation, hit J, boop, it just pops off, and anything that is attached to that block obviously goes with it. So things where you start with things detected and then like let it go, like if you want to make a large arrow off your machine that then, because it has to start connected, and then you can disconnect it and then fling it off in space, or if you want to drop a weight for a weight powered catapult, which would be like trebuchet or something like that, that is also how that is done. The next block that is available is the contracting spring. This is built a lot like the strut in that you basically click from one point, hold down the mouse button, and then let go on another, and that connects 2 points with the contractible spring. Now, of course, when you're not actually pressing any buttons, it just kind of stretches out just fine. But if you hit the key to contract it, which is the default L, boop, that pulls it down. It provides a pulling force, which pulls whatever the 2 points connected to are. Right, so obviously things like catapults, things like ballistas, or most machines where you need to move something around, that is one of the primary ways to move something in a linear fashion. The next block we have is a suspension block. It is by default 2 blocks tall, but of course it has a spring on it, and what it does, if something hits it, it just kind of compresses a little bit, so you can give shocks to your machine wheels, or to lessen the blow of any part of your machine that may hit any other part of your machine. So we can do that. So now we have a little cushioning thing right there, and we pull this forward, boop, that hits that and gets kind of cushioned. Though I don't like that's not right there. Let's kill that one, put it there. Bam. Okay, so that stops it and it cushions it and is all good. The next block we have is the piston block. Again, it tells us right here that the default button is the letter H. And if we start off with this, it looks like a normal 1x1 metal block, but if you hit the H key, it extends out to a little more than 2 blocks. So that is another way to kind of move your craft around. It's a good way to, if you want to like lift your craft up for some reason, like to change angles, you can do that. And of course, you can stack multiple of these in a row, and you get a much, much greater distance of travel because you're doubling however many blocks that you stacked in a row. The next block we have is the spinning block. It is a lot like the steering block in that it rotates about its center axis. However, once it starts, it doesn't stop. It just spins in the indicated direction with no key presses at all. So this is how you kind of have spinning blades of death and all that stuff. And it spins at a fairly high rate of speed, especially compared to the steering block. So that's his kind of thing. And of course, you can, if you stack multiple spinning blocks on top of each other, the top ones spin in multiples of however many things. Like, so this is spinning at 1 time speed, that is like 2 times, and that is 3 times speed, just because they're sitting on top of each other. And of course, you can set the thing to change the parameters and double the individual speed of each one. So now that was going 2. And we start simulation. This is now spinning at 6 times what would be the normal default 1x speed. So you can get something spinning very, very fast. The next item we have on here is the grabber. If you ever play Kerbal Space Program, it is the claw. So anything that comes in contact with it, it grabs onto, and it will not let go, because see, I'm actually holding down the button to contract the springs. It will not let go until you hit the V key. And then whatever wants to happen can happen. Then also, the newest blocks to the powered block category is the powered cog and the unpowered cog. Now, the unpowered cog is in here, even though this is the powered tab, because it's there just to interact with the powered cog. These powered cogs default are controlled by the up and down arrow keys, but since our forward and back powered wheels are that, let's just change that to I and K, because as I said, we're going to use I, K, J, and L for as much as we can, because that reminds us as ASWD. So now that we have that wheel, it does kind of go on its own a little bit, but if you hit a direction that you have set to control, it will spin in that direction. And of course, unpowered cogs mesh with the powered cogs great, so if you then start motoring the powered cog, the unpowered cog follows as any gear would be expected to. Now, you can also point the gears at 90-degree angles to a powered gear, and they work just fine too. So you can not only can you transfer power in a line, but you can transfer power around corners with these cogs. Though, really, I'm not exactly sure how much utility they have, because you could always use the regular steering block to have something rotate about an axis, and you don't need to transfer it through several gears. You can just kind of have one where you need it. So I'm still trying to figure out exactly the best application for these gears, other than the fact that, yes, you can use them as weapons. The gears will grind up people, so they are useful for that. Now, speaking of which, now we get to the weaponry, probably most people's favorite part of the game. We have our spiky ball, which is just that. It is a ball covered in spikes. It attaches to your craft, and it will stay attached to your craft even during the simulation. So now that we have one attached to this piston, it extends with everything else. Oh, we still have a piston on the bottom that we don't need. And it'll just stay on your craft and won't really go anywhere. But it's the kind of thing that if you do make part of your craft detach and fly toward the enemy, you can have them be attached to that. We have the metal blade, which is a flat, sharp blade, which is good for cutting up your enemies, or just kind of moving stuff around. I've used it as a hockey stick before, even. And it's the kind of thing, so if we take, say, a spinning block, or even a new gear, but let's just take a, let's just take a spinning block. Let's put it there for now. And we can attach our blades to it. Of course, if we want them to angle us away, you can rotate any part in the game by hitting the letter R. Oop, yep, so that, that's not... Oh, we're getting an intersection because we're hitting the top of our bounding box. Yeah, so that's a bit of a problem. If we lower the machine to the ground, does that give us enough room? No, it doesn't get us quite enough room. Well, okay, I guess we'll just have a two-way propeller then. Or, well, it's not really a propeller, a blade death. And, okay, so now we see, yeah, now we have a spinning block with some spinning blades. And depending on how it attaches to our machine to begin with, we could use that to be killing. So actually, I think I know a better way to do that. Let us... yeah, we can just put it on the side here. Put our spinning block. I believe that would be tall enough to not hit the ground. Nope, that hits the ground. I know. We can do that. Now let's make sure we set this to something that is not left or right. So let us go with O and L. Alright. Put a spinning block on that. And attach our weaponry. Now that may hit the ground a little bit, but yeah, if we hit the O key, too high. Alright, so now we have a spinning thing, and we can kind of change what angle it's at with our O and L keys. So now any soldier that approaches us from the side will get quite mangled. Moving down the list, we have a circular saw, which is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It is a spinning wheel o' death. It spins on its own and does not stop. It can attach to any block, and if you, it messes up soldiers pretty darn good. We have the next item is the metal spike. Again, it really is just kind of its namesake. It is a metal spike. It is sharp. It is pointy. And if you ram it into your enemies, they will feel much pain. And one of my favorite things to do is to use the piston blocks we have discussed before and have spikes on our piston blocks. So that way we just go like boom, we can actually stab things actively with our spikes and just like run up to things and go blah, stab, 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 stab. The next item in that weapons menu is our cannons. They are a single shot cannon, and the default key to fire them is the letter C. So if we rotate them to face forward, we put on 2 of them like there. Now if we hit the letter C, let's boop, boom. We could fire 2 cannon shells, both at the same time, and they don't really travel very fast on their own, but they have a lot of kickback because the cannonball is so heavy itself. So it's really easy to build a machine that kind of rips itself apart with way too many cannons. The third key, of course, if you want to have more than one shot, I should say, you can change the key mapping. So instead of being just the letter C, we can set it to this one to M, and we can set this one to N. And now we can control which one we fire. Boom, that we fire for cannon A and fire cannon B. So you don't necessarily have to fire every cannon all at the same time if you set the cannons to fire on different keys on the keyboard. The next weapon in the list is the flamethrower. It is by default the letter Y, and it has 10 seconds worth of fuel. You can turn it on and turn it back off again with the same key, and if you don't use up all 10 seconds worth of fuel, you can turn it back on again. So we can start here, boom, hit the letter Y, we turn it back off again. It has not been 10 seconds, so there's still some fuel left, so we can turn it right back on again, and this time we'll just kind of let it burn out. And even though I'm not getting any keys on the keyboard, we are running out of fuel about now. There we go. We have run out of fuel, even though I have not hit a key on the keyboard, and it cannot be activated again. It must be noted that there is some danger to using the flamethrower in that if you set something on fire and continue to drive toward it, you will set yourself on fire. So you may make sure that you want to be backing up while you're using the flamethrower. But it can certainly be a very fun weapon. The bomb is one of my favorite weapons. It is a lot like the spiky ball, but it does not actually attach to your craft itself. It just kind of hovers above the point you attach it to. And if it doesn't fall very far, it won't do much, but if it touches anything else, it explodes and sets everything on fire nearby. And unfortunately, our craft made of wood is very flammable and does fall apart pretty easily. But of course, there is a holder designed specifically to hold bombs. Now, let's put it right back here. And if we put our bomb inside of that, there we go. When we start the simulation, no booms! It holds it just great. And if you haven't noticed, we've kind of built ourselves the first working catapult. So we can hold down our L key to contract the springs, let go of the stop, and boop! Boom! Exploded peasant house. So we have actually just completed this zone, and you can see you get a little fanfare. But we still have a couple more weapons to go over, so we'll keep doing that. Now, if we take out the bomb, there are a couple other things we can place in there as well. We have a flaming boulder, which operates a lot like the cannonball. It doesn't actually explode, but it is already on fire, so anything it touches will be on fire. Thankfully, the metal holder does prevent us from catching fire at this particular time, so we can just go boop and let go like that, and bam, it does have its own connect, and it'll just set things on fire as it rolls around as well, which is fun. But of course, you don't always want to set everything on fire, because again, you can set yourself on fire too if you're not careful. So there is now, as a version 0.03, a regular boulder, which is just a rock, which does rocky things. Oh, like that. That is much heavier than the other things. That is the first time I've used that, and it's very heavy. Okay, so that is the thing. It is much, much heavier than the flaming boulder or the exploding bomb, but it certainly has a lot of momentum. Now, the last item in the weapons category is the plow. This item was added in .02. And we have to take our spikes off to demonstrate this. And it is pretty much that. It is a plow. It allows you to drive through people without them kind of necessarily getting stuck underneath your wheels, because that has been a problem in the past where you just kind of like drive over a whole army of dudes and they just end up kind of like gumming up your wheels and axles and stuff like that. So if you use the plow, that doesn't happen. Of course, the plow obviously has many other uses, including moving objects out of the way, or you could probably even use them to hold up things if you use it in a vertical way. So you can kind of use it kind of like the half pipe, only like bigger. So I'm going to put those spikes back because I like them. Alright, so the next category is the flight category. We do have various craft. We have a flying... actually, let's demolish this whole thing. We've kind of demonstrated that we do have a catapult now. And that is kind of the basis of a catapult, where you have a hinge thing, a springy thing, and a thing that holds your bomb. And it uses the leverage of a long arm and a short arm with the springs to get more action out of one side than you put into the other. Because yay, Newtonian physics. Alright, so let's just annihilate all this stuff. So we can talk about flying machines. We'll keep our spikes on it. So we do have a couple of different flying parts right now. We have a Da Vinci screw, which is the name for this kind of thing, and it is the default key of O. And what this is basically just kind of a propeller which pulls you in whichever direction it's pointed. So in this case, it's pointed up. So if we hit the O key, it pulls us up. Though we can see we have a weird weight distribution right now. So it's not really lifting us up evenly. So there are several options we have to fix this. We can either add more propellers to the front or remove propellers from the back, something like that. So now we lift up a lot more evenly. But again, if you go into the key mapper, there are plenty of parameters for these propellers. Now, there is, of course, the key to operate them, and there is a speed thing. So right now, there is too much lift in the back and not enough in the front. So if we take the front propellers and increase them to, say, 0.125, and we lift up now, we are no longer really front heavy. In fact, we're kind of going backwards a bit, and we had a really harsh landing and we broke a wheel, which makes us sad. So, but this really just kind of pulls you up a bit. Now, of course, you can go ahead and place these on the side or on the front or anywhere you want, and if you set these to different keys, let's say, for example, we set this one to the J key, this one to the L key, and we'll set this one to K. Now, if we hold down O, we go up a little bit, and we can pull ourselves sideways with one key, pull ourselves the other way, and we can actually, we'd have to rebalance this thing, because now we've added more weight to the front by adding the propeller to the front, so we've kind of messed up our weight a little bit. Let's see if we can balance it out just by throwing another one of these on the back. Well, that'll pull us backwards. Okay, so that actually pulls us backward a little bit. So, but now we can pull up ourselves. Okay, but yeah, you can do really kind of weird things to kind of try to pull yourself around with these things. We're not. It can take a little while to balance. You may have seen the previous video where I built a plane that does operate on these things mostly. But we can just move on a little bit now. The next thing here is an aerodynamic propeller. Now, if you put this on a spinning block, or any kind of rotating block, but let's just say a spinning block or two. That's going the wrong way. These things can generate quite a lot of lift for their size. However, because of the way they're made, they can only be spun in one direction. So, in fact, these spinning blocks are going the wrong way for these things to generate lift. Oh, no, I guess they were going the right way. I'm sorry. I apologize. I had that wrong. It does need to go that way, which seems backward considering the skew of these things. So, yeah, these propellers are a little weird. They only work going one way. You can't like flip them around and have them close. You can't have counter-rotating blades. So they do have a lot of force, but they can be a little tricky to use because they only work going one direction. The next block is the wing. This wing does generate lift if it has air hitting the bottom side of it or the top side, depending. However, since this doesn't have any angle to it right now, we're not really getting any lift at all. because it is just edge on. That's also going the wrong way. Well, doesn't really matter, but we should be able to go the right way. Now, of course, if you want your wings to face the direction, just hit the R key to rotate them, like you can rotate any block. So now they're kind of facing the right way, but again, we still don't have any angle to the wings at all, so we're not getting any lift off of them. Now, if we want to put some angle on them, we can use these steering blocks like we used before for the steering. Make sure they're all going the same direction. I think this one is backward. Is it? Nope, nope. It was right. It was right. So those are set to left and right. So let's change them all to. Actually, let's go with I and O, I and K. So we'll set all of these to I and K. Did I set that one? I did. Okay. Okay. So now this spins all of them, and each of them rotate about their axis. So if we say attach some wings to them, oh, bounding box. We're at the edge of our bounding box. So let's translate our machine a little bit far forward. Thank you. If we now attach wings to this, to the ends of the rotating blocks, now that they're spinning, we can press the I or K key to put some angle in there, and we start to get a little bit of lift off of this thing. Now you can see, like, these small propeller blades gave a lot more force than this does, but because these wings can be flipped around, we can customize the angle of attack. We can say have one rotating left and one going to the right, and that'll kind of cancel out this whole spinning problem we have. Now, of course, there is one more wing type, which is this square wing, which was added in 0.02, and it actually has much more lift than the primary wing does. The wing panel has more lift thing than the primary wing does. And also, there are nodes on the four sides of these wings, so you can actually kind of go out at great length and just add more things and increase your wing surface like that. So now when we spin these things up and we give it a little bit of angle, we lift right off the ground. And of course, since we have one thing spinning left, the body of the craft wants to spin right. And that's the kind of thing you can solve with the counter-rotating problem. But you can see that is one way to generate a lot of lift with your craft. These wings are so much more powerful than these straight ones right now. It's really gonna have to work on that in the future. But the game is what the game is right now. It is a very early alpha 0.03, so I'm sure that'll be a thing in the future. Now, the last thing we have in the flying blocks is our ballast weight. It is a block that just has a weight that we can change, and this is for balancing purposes. Like when we were attaching all these screws to our prop of our craft, we were having a hard time getting the thing balanced. Well, you can just add these blocks on there and balance them, and you can get it really, really nicely balanced. And of course, the last tab we have is the armor tab. We have 3 different types of armor plates right now. We have a 1x1 armor plate, which can really attach to just any surface you have. We have a 2x1, which does try to attach in the middle of the plate. So if you put it on a piece like that, half of it will stick over one side, half of it will stick off the other, which means that you can cover 5 blocks, or 3.5 block on either side, so 4 blocks total with only 2 panels. And it also means you can kind of cover the sides a bit more, like you can cover over the edges of things. And the third one is a circular one, which is excellent for putting on the outsides of wheels. Now, of course, these armor blocks are necessary. There are archers in the game who shoot arrows at you and will blow your and will destroy your craft. And this armor does protect you from that. There is also this armor is heat resistant, so there are a couple things in the game that can cause heat, and it will prevent them from destroying your craft. However, if there is like a flaming thing, there's still a good chance you could catch fire if the fire is coming from below. It doesn't make you impervious to heat. It makes you resistant to heat if it's coming from that direction of that specific panel. So that is all the blocks we have in the game right now. I've tried to go over all the all the blocks pretty quickly and all of their basic functions, as well as the commands and how you can change the commands of the individual blocks. I hope this gets kind of clears up any kind of confusion for how you can make some more complicated machinery. Because again, just changing up the keys of what does what really goes a very long way into allowing you to make much more complicated machines. I'm going to open up a craft I was working on earlier today. I've been working on a ballista. It is a... No. I did not mean to do that. Okay, so that's the thing. I hit the save key. So, if you try to save something, you want to hit this... let's just give a number, blah, blah, blah. So, if we save this, it'll save that craft. So now if we go into the load, you can see that craft is there. If you want to overwrite something, you click on the name, hit save, it'll say overwrite. You have to click on the same save key again, and then it saves the thing over top or whatever. So let's actually open up Besiege 2. This is actually the one I wanted. I built this in the sandbox, so I did not really build it inside the bounding box mode, but there we go. Now, this craft is using many of the blocks in the game, so it is a spring-based mechanism. It is a slingshot, ballista kind of category of weapon. I have powered wheels in the front, I have powered wheels in the back, so the way I steer this craft, driving forward, I'm really just kind of dragging the back wheels along, but I can turn left or right with those back wheels, and I pivot kind of about the front of the craft, and I like that quite a lot. Now we have a bomb and we have a piece of wood with a grabber and our springs attached to the pieces of wood. They're both laying inside of the half pipes that lower the friction. So we actually are going to be flinging this bomb straight forward out of this machine. I have a couple pieces here that I have. The front wheels are on a bracket piece attached to pivoting blocks. So if I hit the I key, I can actually raise up my angle so I can fire much farther, or I can choose the angle at which I shoot my projectile, which is great for choosing range. And so I can steer / aim the craft with the back wheels. I can change my angle of attack with the front machine, and also you may notice I have a couple angled hinges here holding up this piece. Well, that's because sometimes, just sometimes, the bomb ends up smacking the front of this thing, so I made a little mechanism where I can, lift that up a little bit. I even timed it a little specifically so that the angle changes, so now when the springs pull, it slides it up out of that holder, past everything else, and out into the world. We do have a grabber, so we have to hit the springs, which contract them, and then let go of the grabber as the springs pass their maximum amount of contraction. So it's a pretty quick thing, so let's fire it right about now. It does fire pretty far. This actually was not a very good shot in my opinion. So we will try again. Let's rotate this thing around. Let's pull up the ammunition. Increase the height of angle of attack. And fling. There we go. That's a much better throw. Yeah, this thing will throw quite the long distance. So, in fact, I made a couple more. I think I made a couple more changes in the sandbox, and I might have recorded a thing where I shot much more accurately at a nice little target. So I'll probably throw that in there at the end. So that is all we have time for tonight. That is a basic tutorial, and here is an example of a machine you can use if you throw all of your knowledge together. Have fun, make machines, destroy, destroy, destroy.